The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Join Lowe's Moore as he reveals how you can begin to maximize that power by exploring yourself on the deepest levels and committing to making lasting and positive changes. Get ready to achieve breakthroughs that will lead to accelerated growth and transformation, because you are now tuned in to The Blueprint.
Why they actions contradict the lamb. I'm fellowshipping when I'm with the fam. That's more relations. That's forming a
Good evening and welcome back to Lowe's More in the Blueprint. Again, we look like we're in a transition. Look like Winter's trying to give his last ditch effort. It's like one day is nice, the next day is like we're going back into back into winter. But hey, I believe in the next few weeks, man, that spring is going to win out, and somewhere down the line, someone's going to pop in. And I just like to say that yesterday was just an amazing. It was awesome yesterday, just an awesome day on yesterday and Friday too. 75 degrees. Oh man, I was enjoying it. I was loving it. In New York and Virginia was like being in California. And I was truly enjoying it. And I'm also enjoying that this is Women's Month, Women's History Month. And man, we've been celebrating women all week, all month long. And I'll say it like I say it every week. Women's Month is not just a month. It's every day we should celebrate women. Without a doubt, celebrate my mom, my wife, my daughters, my sister. Just celebrate them all. That's my mom, my Aunt Joyce, my Aunt Dolores. And for Women's Month, we're doing a shout out. And I'm excited to shout them out this week. Amazing. And it's a lot of things in this month. It's Disability Month. It's also March Madness. I don't know if you guys are going crazy, man, but it's so much basketball. I love it. We're going to be by the end of March. We're going to be right into April. We're going to be such a high on basketball, right, that we're going to need help. Like after March 3rd or 4th, when there's no college basketball, it's just going to drop off the scene until next year. And everybody's going to be left. We're going to have to find something to replace that basketball, replace that energy and that drive, and I'm going to be looking around, and it's going to be the NBA. But, college basketball is just faster, exciting, quick, young people, youth. Yeah. And then you get to the pros and it kind of started dragging. Guys start dragging around. Women start dragging around. We older now, So, but hey, enjoy it while you can, right? And so let me get rolling here. Where's my? I don't know what I did with my. Well, here's my pebble. Right, I got my pebble. And I'm about to drop it in the pond. I dropped my pebble in the pond, and I'm expecting the ripple effect of each show. I'm expecting that, man, you're going to get something tonight. You may get something later on in the week, or you might pop on the Lowe's More Blueprint podcast, man, and hear our guest for tonight. And you like, wow, because it's a ripple effect. It just keeps going. And so I'm really excited to that's my favorite word on the show. If you didn't know it or not, I'm always excited to come on, always excited to share. And again, I'm just excited. So let's jump right into this, and let's start with the book of the week. And this is from a good friend of mine and my wife. It's called Real Talk, Black Pain by Terry Williams. She's to manage the Terry Williams and own the Terry Williams agency. And, she had back in the day, extreme bout with depression. She started writing about it. She didn't know what it was at the time. She did several books on this. She's amazing and gifted in regards to public relations. And she just got some awesome books out. And she confronts the issue that, most of the time, Black folks don't talk about depression. They don't talk about anxiety, right? It's just something that's not talking. We just don't mention. We just don't talk about. It's kind of taboo in the Black neighborhood, right? To talk about anxiety and depression and all those kinds of things. So, but Terry brought it out because she was dealing with it, and man, she's made major strides and impact across the United States of America. So awesome, Terry. And then the word of the week is pain. Well, I've been in that a little bit. I've been spiritual pain, mental pain, spiritual pain. I mean, I've been in some pain. My coach used to tell me back in the day when I was trying to be successful in the game of basketball, no pain, no gain. I'd rather avoid the pain though. I just want the gain, but you got to work hard in order to get where you're going. And sometimes there's always a test in life, and you got to go through the test. You got to go through the trial, right? And you got to try to figure out how to manage through it all. So that's the word of the week. And then affirmation, right? I like this one. I like this affirmation. This is the Hill Pierce Harper affirmation and quote moment. It says, "My peace is more powerful than my pain," right? And so, see, it's important what you say to yourself when you wake up in the morning. It's important what you say to yourself all day long. It's important when experiences come your way. It's important in what you say. If you know that your peace is more powerful than what you're going through, your pain, right? You got to speak it. And so that's the affirmation for the week. And then here's my music. And I don't know if you heard of Chandler Moore, Feelings. He deals a lot, young man dealing with a lot of things in his life. In this album, he kind of addresses this. He's become very popular among praise and worship scene. And a lot of young people are dealing with what's happening in their feelings, what's happening in their emotions. And you know what? Success does not cause for those emotions, sometimes those emotions and those pains to go away, right? And most of us don't like talking about it. So awesome album. Sometimes you got to put things in movie in order for people to see it. Sometimes you got to put things in movies, and you got to put things in music, and you just got to find other ways where people can hear how to deal with their own pain, how to deal with their own feelings. And then one of my favorite movies, and of course I'm a Marvel guy, right? And Doctor Strange is one of my favorite, of all the Marvel guys. I like everybody, but Doctor Strange, man, because he goes beyond the physical aspect of it, right? And he deals with some spiritual aspects, some scientific aspects of in this movie, a little bit different than your normal, typical Marvel movie. So it's one I love watching. And if you don't know anything about it, I mean, gifted surgeon loses his ability to operate because he loses his hands, and he was seeking out ways to find out how to become improved or better, and he was spending all his money, and then he realized that, man, how powerful the mind is, right? And of course we know he becomes Doctor Strange, so and then again, I want to again say, this is Women's Month, Women's History Month, right? And we're shouting out to all the women out there. I mean, historically, there's been some wonderful and powerful women, right? And currently, there's some powerful women. And then I believe in the future, there's going to just be even more powerful women. I salute every woman. I mean, I seen my wife go through 4 children, right? I definitely salute her. I mean, I was just thinking, man, when she was squeezing my hand, right? I don't want to go through that pain. So, and then I had to think about what my mom went through, having 4 kids. Man, you guys are Wonder Women, yeah, you Wonder Women. I love it. And I don't know what we would do without our women. So, I wouldn't want to be without my wife. So that's just it. And my daughters too, as well. I can't leave them out, man. And now I got 3 granddaughters. Wow. I got 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson. Well, what would I do without them? So I want to give another shout out. This is, again, I said it was March Madness. My wife went to Fairfield University. I want to say congratulations to Fairfield University for making it to the NCAA championships. And also Albany University. My wife graduated with her master's from Albany University. My daughter coached for Howard University, and they made it to the NCAAs as well. And then my daughter is currently, well, also my daughter played for Fairfield. My wife played for Fairfield, right? And now my daughter is coaching at Stony Brook, who made it to the WNIT. I want to say congratulations to you all. Hey, they did something that I didn't do, right? they did something I didn't do. I didn't make it to the NCAAs. I didn't make it to the WNIT, the NIT. So they did something I did. I had a great college career, right? And I'll tell you, this part of the season is so amazing, because during the season, when you win or lose a game, you get to play another one, right? But when you're playing in your conference championship and you're playing in the NCAAs or the WNIT, right? One and done, right? You win, you go home. That's the pressure of, well, you lose, you go home, not you win, you go home, right? You just keep winning. But I want to say congratulations to them all. And, finally, I want to say congratulations to Mount Vernon High School basketball team, the Knights, and Coach Bob Semino and all the other coaches that he have on the team. They won the county championship. They won the regional championship. And on yesterday, they won the state championship. I think they won the last 17 or 18 out of 21 state championships. Is truly amazing, right? Give it up to the boys from Mount Vernon High School. Just amazing. They went undefeated this year, all the way to the state championships. They went undefeated. So congratulations to you all. So I'm excited. Let's jump right in. I got a little highlight here or some information for you. And right after that, I'm going to introduce my guest, and we're going to be rolling.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Posner Gerstenhaber.
And I'm Dr. Keita Franklin. September is Suicide Prevention Month. And what we know about suicide is that it's absolutely preventable. There's hope and there's help available.
Preventable, but still the tragic paradox that takes more firemen than fire, more police than crime, more lives than car accidents. 135 people are affected by every death, and those effects linger across generations because of the silence that often follows. So we have to start by breaking the silence and identifying the people who are suffering. We need to be asking like we monitor for blood pressure, and we need to be doing this well beyond the doctor's office. The way we can do that is with the Columbia Protocol, a simple set of questions that anybody can use to help identify who to worry about. Our website is cssrs.columbia.edu. There's an app, just go for the Columbia Protocol, and you can be empowered to help.
Wow. Dr. Kelly Posner, welcome to the Blueprint. I think you're on mute. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So excited to be with you, Lowe's. Really,
yeah,
for the opportunity.
Yeah. And I appreciate you. And I want to say thank you because it's been a few years now, but I was down at the with Aspire School, and yes. I had the opportunity to do a combination basketball sports program with you a few years back, and I thought was very unique at the time because you didn't want me just to talk to the young men about playing basketball, but you wanted me to interject the history and also how it transitioned from just being a sport into business. And here's the amazing part. All the guys, including your sons, was elementary school. So, I mean, they were getting they were laying a foundation and getting a quick start.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a conversation for another time, but the fact is we have had a huge commitment. The The low income, high achieving kid is the most underserved in our nation. And the cost of that failure is immeasurable. I'll tell you just one thing. Did you know 20% of prisoners were gifted? We spent $11.5 billion on special ed and 5 million on gifted. So again, we can have a show on that. But
Yeah, that's another one.
You know what? Here's the good news. Like you heard in that clip, there is hope, there is help. Suicide is preventable, despite that it's this tragic paradox, right? More firemen than fire, more lives than car accidents. And when you were talking about Terry's book, right? She talked about bouts of depression. But guess what? That is so not uncommon. Guess what the number one cause of global disability is? It's depression. Not cancer, not heart disease, touches more people than anybody. And what I always say is, I ask this question, what suicide is: a choice, a sign of psychological weakness, akin to cancer, akin to murder, or all the above. And it doesn't matter, Lois, if I'm speaking to doctors or anybody else, how many times I get a choice or all of the above. Absolutely not. Suicide is not a choice. Its biggest cause is a treatable medical illness called depression, but we don't think of depression like we think of cancer, right? You would never hear the word choice when it comes to cancer. And you know what? That stigma, that misunderstanding, I'm weak if I ask for help, this isn't a real illness. Do you know that actually can be lethal? It leads up to 75% of people to not get these very simple life-saving medicines, antidepressants. When you're depressed, your serotonin levels drop and the medicines take care of that. And if you had asthma, you'd have an inhaler. If you had an infection, you'd have an antibiotic. And this stigma that prevents people from getting basic medical care, you know where it's particularly potent? For men and boys, because that help-seeking barrier is so much taller, right? I'm weak if I ask for help. I'll never forget, being, I work with all the, states and organizations, and I was at Border Protection giving a talk to the families across the nation. And the leader of Border Protection said, you know what? It's a sign of strength to ask for help. And that is so important because, even in these times. So here, let me say, here's the good news again. We know how to save lives. We know what the formula is. We actually know how to do away with this cause of death, this leading cause of death. It is probably our one preventable cause of death. Okay. But what is that formula? It's breaking down these barriers of help seeking, so people don't have the impact of that stigma. Okay. And giving access to treatment that everybody should have access to. That what we know is that not treating depression is what kills people. Okay. Not autopsy studies are invariably associated with no treatment or lack of compliance. Since we have these basic medicines like the inhaler for depression, right? Prozac, Paxil, the suicide rate has dropped dramatically across the world, across ages, reversing a trend prior to their introduction. But like I said, many people don't get it because of that stigma. But here's the big context. After 20 years of increases in the suicide rate each and every year, in the last 2 years, even during COVID, we had our first decrease. We had our first decrease in suicide, 6%. But here's the catch, Lowe's. Only the decrease was only among white Americans. Where we're seeing increases is among minorities and particularly Black Americans, okay, and LGBT and other vulnerable populations. And that's terrible, right? We know we have to continue to work hard because that, as you said, the shame, the stigma, the lack of care. There was a hanging in Fort Tryon Park, during COVID. And the New York City Department of Human Rights came to me and said, hey, can you help our community? First, they thought it might have been a lynching, like in many other instances, but then they realized it was suicide. And we have to do so much to go into the community and undo these messages that have been there for across generations, right? And get this, I said African Americans, the CDC also told us that preschool suicide has increased, 5-year-old suicide, but guess what? Only among African American preschoolers. But again, we know the good news is we can do something about this. So I said suicide has decreased, but actually trips for young girls, for teenage girls, to the emergency department has increased 50% during COVID. 50%, right? But among boys, only 4%. You know why? Because boys don't seek help. They're ashamed to seek help. And here's the other really important piece of the formula, okay? We know that 50% of people who die by suicide have seen their primary care doctor the month before they die. We need to be asking questions the way we monitor for blood pressure or do vision testing. Many adolescents who show up to the emergency department who've tried to take their own lives are not there for psychiatric reasons, right? We have to normalize it. But here's the big take home, Lowe's. We have to have that concept well beyond the doctor's office because many people never get to the doctor's office, okay? Wow. So for example, United Steelworkers, it's the number one cause of death in construction workers very often. So the unions have said, let's have the safety check in the morning be more than the hard hat. Let's have it be this simple set of questions, the Columbia Protocol. Major League Baseball brought me out to give it to the teams. The guy working on your knee, right? The softball coach for the 11-year-old, et cetera. We have to put this in everybody's hands. And the one thing I want to share, my co-director, who's going to join us in a little bit, she's the most awesome woman. She was head of suicide prevention for the Department of Defense and for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And she is the one who really helped recognize for the nation why we weren't moving the needle, because we have to find people where they work, live, and thrive or learn, right? Spouses, friends, etc. Even there's a state where it's policy with the Columbia for the janitor. Let me tell you a story, okay? I'm going to tell you 2 stories because I don't want to tell you. I was giving a talk for Connecticut, and this huge system said, we gave it to the janitors, and this clinician from the VA said exactly right. I'll never forget that case where the only person that vet spoke to was the janitor. And it doesn't mean he's ever going to need to ask these questions. But if he's in a position where it would be helpful, right, he'll be prepared to. And let me tell you another thing. We have to make this routine, right? Ask like blood pressure so we can find the people suffering in silence. And many people don't have the will to come to you. So we have to come to them and be asking all the time. And I'm going to tell you this story about my friend, Kevin Hines, who I'm going to bring back on this show with you another time. Okay.
Okay.
He's a CNN hero, amazing guy. You know what? He survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, which is fatal 99% of the time. And he tells a story, Lowe's, that he woke up that morning, 19 years old, and said, if just one person asks me if I'm okay, I won't do it. Gets on the bus. What's wrong with that kid? Gets shooed off the bus. The bus driver shoos him off, crying. He goes to the side of the bridge with policemen riding their bikes by. And finally, this woman walks towards him and he becomes hopeful. And she says, can you take my picture, in some German accent? And he said, screw this. Nobody cares. And he jumped. And I say, people want to be asked and they need to be asked. And he says that people who are considering suicide want someone to save them. What we need is a culture where no one is afraid to ask. And I want to tell you, as he jumped, like every other survivor, all he wanted to do was survive. And he said he realized all of the problems in his life were fixable, except the fact that he just jumped. And he gets down in the water and he realized he's alive. And he feels something slimy. And he says, oh my goodness, I just survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And now I'm going to get eaten by a shark. Just my luck. Right. So he's on ABC, a show a few months later. And somebody writes in or calls in and says, hey, buddy, I was there next to you. I'm so happy you're alive. But let me tell you, it wasn't a shark. It was a sea lion who kept him afloat until he was, he was meant to tell the story. But whether it's the bridge or the gun, or the gas canister in China, pesticide canister, we can have these questions, and people can have their lives saved up until the very last minute. I hope when you go into a CVS soon enough, you'll see them. And it reminds me when I said about the guns, did you know that 2/3 of gun deaths are suicides? And I always said that guy who goes into that gun shop to buy that gun to hurt himself or someone does not want to die and does not know there's help. So we've been worried, and that guy behind the gun counter does not want to sell a gun to them as well, right? So we have a tool that can make a big difference. And President Obama's Deputy Secretary of Education, when the Navy Yard shooting happened, said, what is it going to take to get these questions in everybody's hands? And so we've had a bunch of policy. What Parkland, right? The terrible tragedy of Parkland.
Yes.
We also know that we've had thousands of gun massacres since Sandy Hook alone. And we know that 90% of shooters have suicidal issues. So I said this a long time ago, screen, and you'll find people who need help before it's too late. And my partner, one of my great partners and friends, Ryan Petty, he lost his daughter at Parkland. She was one of the 17 massacres. And those parents at Parkland, they talk more about the Columbia for early identification than they do even about guns, right? Because we can find people and avoid some of these preventable tragedies. But again, here's another uplifting story, because this is really a story that can empower everybody to be part of the solution, right? So after Parkland, a year later, because when you have mass traumas like COVID or Parkland, the risk of suicide goes up. So they had some suicides. So one of the students that were there called up Ryan. Ryan's in Florida. He's in Utah. He said, what? I can't do anything. I can't think. I can't function. So he did the Columbia, found out he was high risk, and called the crisis line with him. He didn't hang up and give him the number. He held his hand, right? Mm-hmm. Theoretically. And he called him an Uber from his dorm to the hospital.
Wow.
A life saved. And it's not only that these few questions are a way to identify risk, they're also a way to connect. Do you know, Lowe's and everybody, that the CDC tells us that connectedness is one of the most important things we can do to help save lives. And lest you doubt the importance of that phenomenon, there was a study that showed that its opposite, loneliness, was equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, more lethal than heart disease or obesity. Wow. And when you just ask and you're there for people, right, it actually is a way to connect as well. And why did people not ask Lowe's? They didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't know what to do with the answers. They didn't know if it would hurt somebody. If I ask these questions, is it going to cause somebody to feel suicidal? Absolutely not. When people are suffering, guess what? They actually want help, right? They actually want help.
Well, it's pretty interesting. Back maybe a couple of years now, and again, I don't know how I got it. I don't know if it was from swimming or whatever it was. I saw my foot was inflamed, right? And I was using some home remedies, soak your foot, and it just wouldn't go down. And just pain just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And so eventually, my wife had gone to church and my daughter was here. I said, look, you need to take me to the hospital. Right. So he took me to the hospital, and ended up having an infection, which they kept me, because it was literally running up my my leg. And so they got it under control. And I was there for, 3 or 4 days. And it was just before I thought I was going to spend my Thanksgiving in the hospital. Right. And so, but when it was complete, right, even when it was complete and I was back home, I was having a real problem at focusing. Right. And I was just mostly thinking about death. Right. I don't know why. My mind was just focused on death. I got to the point where I didn't really want to do anything, say anything, go anywhere. So I end up I said, look, I told my wife, look, I got to go back. I got to go back to the doctor because I had gone to the doctor to look at my foot.
Yeah.
Right. And she didn't, I thought it was an infection. Right. She thought I had broken it. So she took me she had me go to the doctor for for x-ray. Right. And I was still in pain, and make a long story short, I go back to the doctor again, and the doctor asked me if I was depressed. Right. And, we don't really know unless you look up the definition and could understand what the definition is. We don't necessarily know what depression is, and we don't know what the signs are, but I was anxious all the time. And I looked up anxiety, right? And I had all the symptoms of anxiety. Now, the doctor was talking about putting me on if I needed an antidepressant, stuff like that. But fortunately for me, right after that visit and right after I felt like, and I was doing some other things, it kind of broke for me, right? But at least I was willing to go to the doctor, and I told him, like, if it gets worse, I'm coming back. And my wife will tell you, if I'm hurting, I'm out the house. I got a high threshold of pain, but if I'm hurting and I feel like I can't do anything about it, I'm going to leave. I'm out. Somebody's taking me somewhere, but I'm going out of here. And a lot of people don't. They just kind of sit there and suffer in silence and never say anything to anybody.
Exactly. And like I said, particularly with men and boys, they suffer even more in silence. And that's why people always go, wow, I didn't know. They seem fine. That's why we have to, again, make this routine. And that helps address the stigma. And I want to tell you, anxiety and depression, they're really connected. And you said we don't know the signs of depression. Let me just give you a few, right? It can be sad or irritable mood. And in kids and youth, it can be only irritable mood. That's the only difference from adults. Kids who are even fighting, breaking things, temper tantrums. You can't even get this diagnosis called the oppositional defiant disorder as a kid if you're depressed, because they know that's what it's about. There's something called anhedonia, which is loss of interest or pleasure. They're just not having as much fun. They're not doing the things they want to do. They don't seem as hungry. They're not eating as much. They seem more tired. They feel like they're, just not feeling good about themselves. They're not sleeping. There's a constellation, but those are some of the things, just people seem different. And I wanted, I was talking about how men, right? How men can really have this stigma even more. Oh, I know what I meant to say before. Remember how I said this isn't a real illness, I'm weak if I ask for help, that it can be actually lethal. That show 13 Reasons, that's like a teen runaway hit. What does that say? That says this is a rational choice, not a brain-based illness. Guess what happened after that, Lowe's?
What happened?
Suicide spiked. I have another friend who her husband was a Marine pilot, and she was the spokesperson for something called the Tragedy Assistance Program. And she tells a story. Her husband had untreated depression for a long time, went to his commanding officer who said, hey, been there, take care of yourself, take time. But whatever you do, don't go on medicine and don't go to the doctor, because you cannot do that and fly. And now he's no longer alive. And she tells a story of speaking to him one night on the phone, and he was supposed to come home on leave in 2 days. And something in her gut told her to get on that red eye. And she got there, it was too late. And she said, if only I'd had these questions, I would have known not to leave him alone in that hotel room that night. Spouses and family members can be so critical, and what I was thinking, there are all these quotes we have from firefighters. It's feeling alone that feeling alone that prevents you from going out and seeking help. When you see other people are there, you can actually feel okay about that. even Major League Baseball, people write about this in sports, right? You can't even go to the psychologist. They want to tie everything back to, back to the sport. Like it's, a shame. And so I thought it was fantastic that Major League Baseball and coaches and people all over want to figure out how we can make this just like when you had something wrong with your foot. Somebody
Yes.
knew, somebody knew what to do about it. So, this is great. Like we don't have a formula for a lot of things. We don't know what to do, to save lives. This is one where we do, and we just have to communicate. And one of our issues, how I said that, well, so this simple set of questions is policy across all states, most countries, every national, and it's actually helping us save lives state after state. Since using these questions, we've lowered suicide, right? Why is that? Because it's connecting the right people to the care they need. And our one issue is how do we get it in everybody's hands? So my friend from Parkland who lost his daughter, he said, I don't understand why it's not in everybody's hands. I said, because every citizen across the globe doesn't know about it. It's hundreds of millions of times, 150 languages. So that's our, sides of buses and on the sides of milk cartons, Amazon, all global EAPs, most global EAPs use it as part of their health and wellness, right? For employees and their families. They say they might put it on the side of the box. We have to, get the simple life-saving questions and the messages about depression is treatable, suicide is preventable, right? To break down those barriers, like we said. You heard in that clip in the beginning, 135 people are affected by every death. And those effects linger across generations because of that silence that follows. But when we learn to just ask, we can undo that. At one point in history, we learned to start washing hands, save lives. This can actually be This can actually be just like that. The nation of Israel, the people who run suicide prevention, they said that this is not only saving millions of lives, it's changing the way they live their lives, breaking down barriers that have been built up over thousands of years. So now the third generation Holocaust survivor who didn't have a voice does. The Israeli provider can talk to the Arab child, and that impact, culture shift is being mimicked across communities, all over, which is what we can help start to do.
And what led, you didn't just wake up one day and arrive at this career process. How did you get there? How did you get to this point where you're helping so many people? And how, why?
Yeah. So I'm a professor at Columbia, and I was helping run this big national effort, the first treatment of adolescent suicide attempters study. And even though, we had all these ways, I had no idea that a method of identification could make such a big difference. So I took it on like a scientist, and I want to make the biggest difference I can, right? And I took my voice, and this is an amazing science to service story. And I've learned, right, that all these messages, like we know that identification, that's it with anything, right? You take your blood pressure to prevent a fatality, right? We use these questions to identify people who are at risk. And the more that I saw, you could actually have such major impact from something so simple, right? It wasn't a personal thing. It was wanting to make a difference. And the other thing I wanted to say, I keep saying how we have to go find people. We have to break down these barriers because people suffer in silence. So my partner who's coming on, she wrote this urgent memo out of the Pentagon that we have to put this in everybody's hands, right? Because we have to find people. Most people don't get to the doctor. And you know what? The Marines were the first ones to test that out. Legal assistants, financial aid counselors, they lowered suicide 22% that year. then the Air Force, every airman, your spouse, clergy, etc. The only service to lower suicide, and they modeled that, through to communities throughout the world. So I'm very grateful for this this medal that I was awarded, the Secretary
Yes.
of Defense Medal for
Congratulations.
thank you for exceptional public service, because they showed, right, our amazing men and women who fight for us, showed that we can. This is how we can save lives. So, again, it's every single person can be part of the solution. And let me tell you something. When you're asking somebody else and you're helping them, guess what? It helps you. We know from other mass traumas like we're in now that sense of altruism, that sense of helping others actually helps us all heal. And that's what my friend from Parkland said as well, that now as a community, we don't have to sit back and feel helpless. We can all be part of the solution.
Yeah. And you know what was interesting that you say that, because for the many years I used to take my kids to the doctor, to pediatrician, and my wife and I, and then, time she would take them, I would take them. But the doctor, as they got older, I noticed that the doctor would ask, well, how are you feeling? Are you feeling any different? Is there anything that, Dr. Hall, I remember Dr. Hall asking my daughters or asking my sons how they felt, as a part of before they got started. Hey, you feeling good, young lady? You feeling good, young man? Have you been feeling anxious or, and he just started asking those questions. And my mind never thought like, well, why is he asking those questions?
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought, as I was thinking about this, I was like, wow. And even now that we go physically, we go get our physicals, and the doctor asks us a question, how are you feeling? Have you been feeling this way or that way? I mean, and those questions are so important because you never think about it.
Exactly. And the more direct we can be. So I'm going to tell you, and first of all, I don't want to forget to say 20% of adolescents have depression. 20%. This treatable medical illness, right? 1 in 4 people in any room will have, depression, anxiety, and it touches everyone, right? Rich, poor, black, white, celebrity, or teacher. So we know what we can do about it, and the more direct we can be. So the Columbia questions are: have you wished you were dead, or have you actually had thoughts of killing yourself? And if that's yes, have you thought about how you might do this? Have you had these questions and had some intention of acting on them? Or have you started to worked out the details of how to kill yourself? Do you intend to carry out this plan? And then have you started to do something, prepared to do anything to end your life, like collecting pills, buying a gun, writing a note? And why has this been chosen as the global method? First of all, it's the first time we have science-based thresholds for who to worry about. Before, we didn't know. That policeman had to take everybody. That kid, every kid sat in that principal's office. And you know what happens when he does? When you get treated or taken to the hospital when you shouldn't, it shuts you down from treatment when you actually need it. So that question, which is only 1% of people, have you had some intention of acting on them? That risk goes up 100%. That's a big game changer question. And then the other question that I said about, have you started to do anything, prepared to do anything to end your life? Before, if you were lucky, you'd get asked about a suicide attempt, and then you miss the person that bought the gun or wrote the note. Things we cannot afford to miss. And you can go on the website and see the simple questions. You can keep it in your pocket, anybody, everywhere. And again, the more direct we can be, that again, when we think about it as routine and direct, we start to chip away at that stigma.
Yeah. And then my wife has a question here. What's your thoughts about the 988 number?
I think that it's fantastic, and anything we can do to facilitate more direct care. And my co-director, Dr. Franklin, who is involved in many of those things nationally, can expand on that some more as well.
Okay. And And remember, this is interactive. So if you're out there and you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask the questions tonight or make comments. So it says, who who mental trauma is more likely to be treated? The the whites that respond for most mass shooting, or the blacks or for self crimes?
So we know that that blacks are less likely to get treatment, to seek treatment, to have access to appropriate treatment. So, and that's a combination of socioeconomic factors, societal factors, stigma, right, that you spoke about in the very beginning of the book, that touches a lot of people across the globe. It's not, listen, I work with every nation. So I did my second webinar with the nation of Namibia, right? Every country, every nation, same thing. You should have seen the comments. Yes, we're told that it's an abomination. It's an
Right.
abomination if you have depression,
It's
right?
a sin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Suicide's a sin. I mean,
It
you
is.
you hear those things, and so yeah.
Those are the myths, right? That
Yeah.
stigma that we just have to, that literally, like I keep saying, can be lethal. But we're making progress, and we just have to keep on sending those messages.
Yeah, and I was on the board for the National Council of Drug and Alcohol Dependency, NCADD, and we had a program for young people in the Boys and Girls Club when I was there.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous impact because, particularly for elementary school and middle school and high school, because the teachers would come in and they would have these classes talking about, really is dealing with early childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Because most young people don't know how to talk about what they're feeling or what they're experiencing. And we had one incident where when the teacher asked a question, like, how you feeling, and then went around the room, how you feeling, and one young person, elementary school kid, said, hey, I see myself jumping off a building.
Yeah.
So right away, and he kept saying it over and over again, so right away they let us know that it happened, and then we were able to contact the parent, and then the parent was able to move to get help.
Exactly.
Right. But if the question, it was just a simple question, how are you feeling?
Yep. And now with the more direct questions, we can save even more lives, right? And the whole point is, you were lucky that somebody did that. But when you're asking everybody, every teacher can be equipped, every coach, every parent. I got to give the lead presentation to the Senate after Parkland. And I said to the senators, like, you all have policy for the policeman and the doctor. How do we get it in every parent and every coach's hands for those people who may never ever get to the doctor, right? So the more you just can do it routinely and equip everybody, so when that moment feels like it would be helpful, that's an easy lesson we've learned.
Right. Yeah. No. So important. All of this is so important, and a very valuable and important conversation. It says, for the layers of people who are not
therapists,
for the lay people who are not therapists. What
same
questions?
Same questions. I wish we had it up. I have a thing here, but it's everybody. You do not need to be a mental health professional. Anybody from a custodian, teacher, parent, kid, everybody can ask this simple set of questions.
Yeah, and being on the board, I met a lot of interesting people of NCADD, and one of the rabbis was talking about, of course, NCADD made a presentation at one of the rabbis, I guess the synagogue, and he was, in his mind, he said, like, hey, nobody, or she said, hey, I don't have this problem in my synagogue, and somebody made a simple presentation about how they got started with alcohol or drugs and so forth and so on, and what it led them to, and before he could get out of there, I mean, almost half the synagogue was asking more questions, and a situation that a pastor or priest or a rabbi, something that we don't think about in the church, as a problem when it comes to depression or anxiety. We don't really talk about those things.
Exactly.
And so there, yes, there should be the aspect that we all want to grow spiritually, right? But sometimes it's not just, we can't just pray it away. Some people got to go through the process, right? And I was trying to get the churches, to have some seminars or workshops, right? Because the pastor's not the all and all be all, right?
Yeah. But you know what? They're often the first line of defense, so to speak. I'll never forget years ago, the partners in clergy, in Maryland brought me out, and the tears, right? Because that's who people come to. And whether you're a teacher or a pastor, you want a tool to help your constituents. And I'll never forget this guy who was a Marine, not a Marine, a National Guardsman. He was like 20 years old. And he said, ma'am, can I ask you a question? I said, of course. He said, this is so important. We all need to be singing from the same sheet of music. Right. And the fact that this young guy got that was so fantastic. And remember how he said when the Marines and the Air Force lowered suicide, okay, every clergy, right? That's been so critical. And when I was on with Namibia, they said, yeah, when you're in communion, when you're doing your wedding thing, these questions, people from churches all over the nation for so many years have said, hey, can you guys, we want to put cards in our church. We want to, and the other thing I want to say, Lowe's, that's very important and connected to this is that it's also the Columbia's identity, its policy across all 50 states and all of these areas, right? And the systems link, but it's also a vital part of caring for the caregiver and protecting the protectors. So when the police or the firemen do it in these states, they're not just doing it in their own job, they're doing it to save their own lives. Ask your fellow firefighter, care for your fellow firefighter, and that's so critical when we're thinking about, helping ourselves, as the front line. So clergy too, right? They have the same issues that we all do. So it's not only that they can be helping the people they're helping, these can be used to help save their lives as well.
Right. And, sometimes we can get a false sense of what we have in terms of God complex, particularly I've seen it among athletes, among entertainers, and we kind of live in this world where we're invincible.
Yep.
Right. And that's why you've seen a number of NBA basketball players, also football players and hockey players that have come out in regards to dealing with depression. And now the NBA has a whole program on, NBA cares in regards to dealing with mental health issues. And I think we had another question up there. Let's see. I think it's down at the bottom. It says, are there any spiritual outreach in place for depression, or it's only medical medical options? Since depression is mental, what is being done for the mental reconstruction?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, it's gone well beyond medical facilities. We hope and we encourage that people can reach out to get identified, right, in those places that, as I keep saying, because they don't usually get to the doctor's office, and they can be connected to care, right? The more we can have those community solutions, which, the more we've learned that is just vital for helping people who need help get the treatment they need.
Right. I think Lauren just put up some how to get the questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you'll see they're always the same questions, and they connect. We have an app, by the way, on both Android and Apple, and you can see they're always the questions, but they have cards. Ask your spouse, ask your friend, ask your athlete. Always the same questions, but it can just connect you in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, this has been awesome, very informative.
Thank you.
It's the whole thing with, situations of people listening, number one, being able to listen to, uh, you know, podcasts like these, reading about this information and being able to share and become more aware. I mean, and my wife is showing some family photos here. How's the family doing?
I was going to say, when you said 4 kids, I had 4 kids in 5 years. There you go.
Woo!
They're doing well. Thank you, Lowe's. Oh, look at that.
Oh yeah. That's my favorite right there.
Me too. Me too.
They weren't quite that little when I met them, but
Yes.
yeah. So, and how old are they now?
I love this. Can somebody give me all those great things you put together?
Yeah, I can send them to you. I can email to
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like we got another. It says, yeah, sometimes people suffer in silence because when they share how, what, or they are feeling, others will say,
Yes.
oh, yeah. I'm just looking for attention. You're having a pity
Yeah.
party, and
Yeah.
so people suffer. They just don't say anything. Wow, yeah, that's true, and it's one of the real keys is that, um, being able to communicate it. I mean, when I wrote my book, from the Boys and Girls Club to the NBA, right, from and Life on the Narrow Road. In the beginning, I started to talk about my family, and I've said this plenty of times. As I was writing the book and going back through experiences within my family, right, I just literally started crying. And here I am, I'm a grown man, right? But as I was writing, man, all the trauma that I had as a young person, came back like it didn't go anywhere. And so when you think about now adults dealing with early childhood trauma, even now, and I think it was a Dr. Nadine, I forgot her last name. She's on TED Talk on YouTube on early childhood trauma and the impact of it in your health.
Yep.
As you become an adult.
Yep.
Wow.
It's sad and embarrassing to say I once had thoughts of taking my life. See, that's so sad, because it's not an embarrassing thing, right? I just said that, depression is a medical illness, right? And again, if you had asthma or an infection, you wouldn't be embarrassed, right? Mm-hmm. It's a chemical brain-based illness, right? Your serotonin levels deeply, that's what makes having thoughts of taking your life, that's a symptom of depression, right? It's a chemical, heritable, genetic illness. And this is the myth that we have to undo.
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for sharing. I mean, even it's hard to share. I just think that when I was sharing about what I was feeling, on my men's call, and it was a men's spiritual, a national spiritual call, and I was going through. Right. And I was like, I was sharing it with those guys, how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that a number of guys felt that way. It wasn't just me
exactly
feeling that way. It was a number of guys feeling that way. And it was good to be able to have people to have the conversation with.
Yep.
Or people to even call you. I mean, guys started calling me like, hey man, how you doing? And everything good. So then you have a team of people that really care about you. And I think this is how do you help that young person suffering from past traumas? They do not wish to seek help from people from the church.
You have to keep sending these messages, right? That this is so many people have the same thing. And again, if you had asthma, you would take this inhaler, right? There is help. There is these things are preventable. There's treatment. And this is a medical illness like everything else. Brain health is the same as anything else. So when we start to, kind of really address those messages, that the best thing you can do, a sign of strength, is seeking help. Then we help them actually, we break down those barriers that we've been suffering with for so long.
I like that. The nugget, the dime you just dropped, the sign of asking for help
is a sign of strength. Exactly.
It's a sign of strength.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people don't want to ask,
Yep.
we will sit there and kind of suffer. I mean,
Yep.
That was one of my biggest problems growing up. It didn't have anything to do with, trauma or anything. It was just that when I didn't see other people in my class, and particularly in elementary school, asking for help, right? So I just suffered. I didn't know. I didn't know what to do in the classroom. I wouldn't ask the teacher because I didn't want people to feel like I didn't want people to feel like I was stupid or something because I didn't know. So I didn't say anything. Like, I don't know that answer. I don't know what you're talking about, so nobody ever says anything, and so we just sit there in it.
Yep. Liz, I was wondering, can we play a video if we send you the link?
It's possible. Yeah, anything's possible. We could try. So you're going to send it to, where do you want to send it?
Send it to me. I have to figure that out. I'll figure that out.
You want to text it to you?
No, send it to my email. She sent me something to my email already. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so she's working on it. You got it in your email already?
No, I didn't. I don't have the video. I have.
Send it to her email. I think you send it to her to her email already.
Yeah. I think she's going to send it right now.
Okay, and then we'll try to work on it. Hey, all this is new to us. We keep just evolving as we go along with the blueprint.
Yeah.
We launched out into the deep, and just say, hey, let's do this.
There's another comment.
Yeah, there's another comment down there. How do you help that one suffer from depression, when most facilities say that the person over 18 must call for themselves?
You just have to be there to try to say, I'm here for you, right? You do not have to suffer like this. There is help, okay? And we're going to get you there together, right? So even though if somebody's under 18, they have to do what you say, the more people, remember I said this, people who are suffering actually want help. They want to be asked. They want to be connected to care. Remember I said that Kevin Hines said, if just one person had asked me if I was okay, I wouldn't have done it. He realized after he jumped that this is this brain chemical illness that made him feel like he just wanted the pain to stop. But there is help to treat that pain.
Right. And if a person's over 18, wow, that's interesting. If they're over 18, do they go to the doctor? I mean, that's where I would go.
Well, listen, this is the thing, we know that it's so, again, my partner, Dr. Franklin, talks about this like battle buddies. Peers are one of the most important weapons we have. Weapon's the wrong word, but people that can make such a difference. There was a study, 11,000, 10 EU countries, 11,000 students. Of course, peers asking peers was the thing that reduced suicide attempts more than anything, right? You can be there for your friend, ask your friend. So that watch out for each other. And that is just so, again, so critical.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if the person is willing to get help, because that's over 18. Willing to get help is important. Like you just said, ask. That person's, oh yeah, I need help, right? And if that person is asking for help, then there's a possibility of therapy.
Yeah.
It's a possibility of getting help if they want help, So that's
Right.
that's
And the more we can keep showing them that, again.
Yeah, you can be helped. That's what you're saying. You could be helped. You could get help.
And this is no different than breaking your arm, right? You
Mhm.
get a cast, it's this is, remember I said that depression is the #1 cause of global disability. Get this statistic, 264 million people around the world are currently living with depression. Guess how many with cancer? 18 million. 264 versus 18. So when the study came out that antidepressants were the #1 prescription in the country, my quote to the media was, that's encouraging. We worry much more about undertreatment than overtreatment. I got to give a speech to the leaders of the European Union on how to fight depression and suicide. And I said, 90% of suicides have a treatable medical illness, most often of which is depression. Unfortunately, most people who need these treatments don't get it, 50 to 75%, because of the things that we've been talking about, right? So these are,
right.
Again, we don't have a cure for cancer. We don't have a cure for heart disease, but we do actually know how to cure this. Do you know the CDC told us that we're the only developed nation in the world where the life expectancy was going in the wrong direction? The only developed nation in the world where it's not going up, it's going down. So again, this is something we know what to do about.
Wow. Actually, that's good news.
It is good news. It is good news.
Mhm.
And you know how I said we've seen all these reductions in suicide by using these simple questions, right? So there's the largest provider of outpatient community healthcare in the United States. They reduced suicide 65% in the first 20 months in one state. And they brought it to life by telling a story about this guy who they called a few times and he said he was fine. The last time you called me and asked me those questions, I was on the bridge. The power of asking beyond the doctor's office, right?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And what'd you say? Is that the video?
No, that's the questions.
Oh, those are the questions.
And if you go scroll down a little bit, you can see the picture on the top. But again, this everybody can be empowered with this.
Wow. That's awesome right there. Yeah.
I have this video that we might be able to see or not. And it was the night Anthony Bourdain died. And on primetime, Chris Cuomo spent the last 3 minutes of his primetime show saying, everybody stop what you're doing, right? Go get these questions. Let me tell you why it will save a life, right? And maybe it's just not the magic of the questions, but the fact that people know you care, right? We all can be part of the solution because people don't often have the will to come to you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said earlier, a lot of this is your thought process. I mean, it's your ability to think and want to do something about what you're feeling or what you're experiencing.
Well, I might just argue with that for a minute or be devil's advocate, right?
Okay.
That when people are suffering or having these chemical illnesses, right, like depression, it clouds their ability to think, right? Remember he said if so, and then when he jumped, he's like, all of a sudden, all he wanted to do was survive, because that black hole that is caused by the chemical illness often makes you not able to think. And that's why we have to, again, reach out and ask somebody so that we can help connect them to the care they need.
Okay. That's good advice. Definitely, without a doubt. Yeah. And I mean, you know, yeah, the positive thing I wanted to say something on a lighter note, but this is a lighter note that you can prevent this, that you can, that is like, that's great news.
Exactly.
And but I was just thinking about your boys, in the first time I met them. I think Stan and I, we were out in the park, right? I was doing like a little basketball clinic with them. And you know how it is when you work with little kids. That everybody was already like LeBron James and Michael Jordan already. They were just like, and they were barely reaching the rim. They were barely reaching the rim at the time and stuff like that. But they had as these kids would say today, they had mad energy. They had a whole lot of energy.
There you go.
I was like, you're just trying to get rid of this energy.
Exactly.
All right, it looks like we got the video. One of the
All right,
videos.
so as Axe was telling us, Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, surprising losses, but they did not die in a surprising way. Suicide is a dirty secret in our society. It is a plague that has taken more lives every year for decades. We don't talk about it because, as Axe said, there is a stigma and a shame attached. Even the phone number on the screen. All right, we put it up there. It's good. It's good to get the information out there. It's good to give people a chance. But there's an assumption, and it's that people in that kind of pain will have the will to ask for help. But too often, they do not. The rest of us feel powerless to do anything, especially when the person in need never says anything. But maybe that's because we're not asking them the right questions. But you can. And in doing so, you might just help stop a suicide. Please do this for me and for yourself. Search online for Columbia Protocol for Suicide Prevention. Columbia Protocol for Suicide Prevention. I also tweeted out the link. Go to my page at Chris Cuomo, you'll see it. What is it? 6 very simple questions that you can ask anyone that you're worrying about. One of them is whatever they ever wished they could go to sleep and not wake up. Have they started collecting pills? Have they gotten a gun or given away valuables? Basic ways to help pick up crucial warning signs. All right, you're going to be skeptical. I understand. The Marine Corps rolled out this protocol for everyone to use, from legal assistants to members of clergy. What happened? Suicides among active duty Marines went down 22% in 2014. That's a big number. But here's the catch. Maybe it's not the magic of the questions. The catch is that the protocol works because people care enough to engage. That's another thing that is revealed by suicide, another dirty secret. We need to care. Caring counts. It can literally be medicine for someone in mental or emotional suffering. So reach out. Don't wonder what's going on with someone. Ask them. We are all.
Wow.
We're all in this together. Powerful piece, right?
Yeah, that is definitely, without a doubt. Wow. Yeah, that's important. I mean, that's a powerful message.
Yep. And leaders like yourself, like everybody. I mean, we did a show with Sanjay Gupta and him and he got up there and talked about his own mental health struggles, right? The more we can all say this touches everybody, the better off we will be. And I want to tell you, while so she got delayed, but my my Dr. Franklin is coming on now for the last 15 minutes or whatever we have left. But just for you guys who have the ability to ask questions, she's just a rock star for the nation, the answer on the hill, the innovator, amazing woman, right? She's running to Congress, doing all these things, who really, really helped us move the needle, ran this for DOD and Veterans Affairs, and she's just an amazing resource. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Franklin. I just saw you.
Hi there. How are you this evening?
Well, we're looking for your picture right now.
I'm sorry.
Kelly, I want to say thank you for taking time out your busy schedule. Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
enjoy it. Yeah,
All right.
definitely. And tell the family I said hello.
Willows, and I'm coming back. All right.
Okay. Yes. Yes. All right, Doc, you here? Dr. Franklin. You trying to get that picture on. Well, Doc, while you trying to fix it, we trying to work on it. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was a lot of, Kelly was great. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and because Kelly spoke so highly of you, and
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to be here with you this evening. I'm Keita Franklin, and I'm a social worker by training. I've spent the last 8 years or so in of my federal career working across broad systems to prevent suicide, and most recently at the Department of Veteran Affairs, working to prevent suicide amongst the 20 million veterans that have served our nation. And before that, spent some time at the Pentagon, also as a leader in the area of suicide prevention, working with active duty service members and reserve and guard and their family members and even their children to try to prevent suicide amongst that population. And I've spent the last 2 years in private sector, where I'm working with an organization called Loyal Source, where I'm working as their chief clinical officer to provide clinical expertise across government contracts, and then also working with Dr. Posner at the Columbia Lighthouse Project, where we together work to disseminate the Columbia Protocol, which is I'm sure Dr. Posner told you all about it. So I'll pause there.
okay, yes, and thank you for taking time, out your schedule. I mean, when she started talking about, United States of Defense and all these things, I was like, wow, that's big time stuff there,
Yeah.
and what's interesting when you talk about veterans.
Yes.
My wife and I, I was an executive director for the Boys and Girls Club, Mount Vernon, for and director of development for Boys and Girls Club for 27 years. So I come across a lot of young people, and a lot of people in those 27 years were little kids, grew up, graduated from high school, and went on to do other things. And one of my kids went on into the military, man, and kind of, and eventually he got out, and he ended up back this way as a veteran.
Okay.
And he was having a tough time, and my wife, and when he came to me at the Boys and Girls Club, and he looked a little strange. I mean, and I said to him, hey, do you need me to do something for you? Right. And he said, yeah, I want you to take me to the Veterans Hospital. I'm having some problems,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife and I, we put him in the car, took his luggage, and because his sister had called me and said, hey, you need to do something with him. And we drove around for a while. I mean, different places, trying to find, eventually end up in the Veterans Hospital in Brooklyn. And I mean, literally every other week I get a call from him saying thank you.
Oh, that's terrific. That's terrific. It can be a difficult time when they return from military service and transition into a veteran. I mean, in part, when you're on active duty, you feel this strong sense of mission and purpose, and you know your role, you know what you're supposed to do, whether that's flying an airplane or loading an airplane or, handling drones or just being a medic. Whatever they do, they have a strong desire for being a part of the team and knowing what their mission is. And then immediately, like in some cases in one day, they transition from being active duty and involved in this very meaningful work, like protecting our nation's freedom. There's probably no more meaningful work to then being a veteran, where they suddenly are missing the camaraderie, and like in the military they call it unit cohesion, like that feeling of being on a team. And they will they're missing that, and then they sort of lose a little bit of their identity. Even if they only served for 4 years, they really held that identity close and strong. And then if you add on that the likelihood that they could have been exposed to trauma, post-traumatic stress, they could have aimed their weapon in a in a way that was scary for them, and they could be re-experiencing some of those events, and it can just get complicated quick. So, I appreciate that you were there for this fellow. And despite the fact that, like, you guys met through the Boys and Girls Club, which is also just another incredible organization that I've respected so much over the years.
Yeah. And, and as you say, we say veterans, but a lot of us were, myself, a former professional athlete, right? And I think for anybody out there who's had a long career and they're at the end of their career and they just don't know what they're going to do next, like retirement, right?
Yes.
Like when I finished playing, all my life I played basketball as a little kid growing up, becoming successful, and then all of a sudden my career is over, right? And there's nobody cheering. He's talking about purpose. Nobody's cheering.
Right.
No going into the locker room. No more with your teammates. It gets tough, as you come out of that transition out of that career as an actor, actress, entertainer, and it's over, right? You could experience some things. So
Right.
it's not quite the same as I was, fighting for the country, which is at another whole level.
Right. Yep.
Right. It's another whole level, but it's in return, it's still stress and it's still trauma.
Yep, I know. I think that professional athletes and even college-bound athletes and things like that have a lot of comparisons to the military population. And even, the military often consider themselves to be warrior athletes. They'll use that term, warrior athlete, because they have to have the same level of stamina and fitness in some cases as athletes. And so athletes are also on a team. They know their mission. If you're the point guard, if you're the shooter, you know what you're supposed to do out there. You know your role, and so it is a good comparison to think through. And also, we compare sometimes this population to law enforcement,
Yes,
who have like high operational tempo and who are like sometimes running off of adrenaline to do some of our nation's most important work too, and putting their safety at risk. And so there are some comparisons. You're right, and that's a good one.
Yeah, paramedics, firemen. Yeah,
Yeah.
that same kind of trauma, stress.
And service members, when they're leaving for these deployments, they're away from their family, and their children continue to grow, and they continue to move on. Their spouses often get new skills, and they learn how to do things differently as well. And so then they come back and they have to reintegrate into the home and sort of figure out, like, what's my role? Last time I handled this or I handled that, and now things are different. So it is a lot to think about.
Yeah, and then it's mentioned here, it says, Dr. Franklin, the trauma for veterans is critical, but also what about the trauma for refugees?
Yeah, this is such a good question. In the last year or so, I've had quite a bit of experience working with the refugee population as I've transitioned away from active duty to working with other populations in the private sector. I've gotten the chance to work with Afghan refugees and as well with unaccompanied children along the border. And one thing that I've learned from this is just this idea that trauma is trauma. Trauma is universal, and there are in some cases some similarities to people that are dealing with fight or flight response or fleeing their country for safety. And so this has been one of the interesting sort of nuances when you're studying trauma, is that it's in the eyes of the beholder. And when people have a risk of life or death, that can really impact their ability to develop if they're a young child, or their ability to survive and to get through it. And so we have a lot going on in our nation right now when it comes to refugees. And I think at the heart of it is really making sure that we're culturally competent, or that we're culturally relevant. We know who we're dealing with, and we know what we don't know about these refugees too. When we're not an expert on Afghanistan, perhaps we should, be careful about that, or not an expert on, some of these other people that are coming into the country, and just letting them teach us. And then also, helping them deal with their safety and security first and foremost.
Yeah, and I know I was feeling a little different in watching the news, whether it's Fox or CNN, and just watching,
Mm-hmm.
what was happening over in the Ukraine. And it was so I was like, man, because you watch stuff in movies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but you could say to yourself, unless somebody said it was a true story or based on a true story, um, you're just thinking like, man, that's a movie. But when you're looking at it on television, it's not a movie.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
These are real people. Yep.
yeah, and I was, I got a little trauma the other day when the husband was talking about it on the morning news, talking about his wife and family. He showed pictures of him and his wife and family recently, and then I don't know why they showed, him, and then they showed his wife and family, his wife, his two kids,
Hmm.
teenagers, just laying there in the street. And they flipped back to him. I was thinking like,
Oh,
well, why did you show that? I mean,
goodness.
because you just seen them, talking to each other, and a little video he was showing of them talking to each other, getting ready to go on this trip, and he was supposed to meet them.
Right.
And next thing you know, there's a picture of them, right,
Right.
right there. I'm like, oh man, this is like, all right, turn the TV, turn the channel, so we gotta look
Right.
at something else. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think, and you don't want to become what they call that. Whereas you've seen so much of this, it just desensitized
Yes.
to violence.
Right.
Yeah. So I got a question here from D Johnson. What about trauma for youth?
Yeah, this is also such a good question because I do worry about our young people today, particularly young people that have been exposed to any sort of type of trauma. And like one of the most important things to think about when you're thinking about youth and trauma is that it is in the eyes of the beholder. So what might be traumatic for one youth might not be for another. So one youth might struggle with their parents divorcing. That could be traumatic. And another youth might, be in a car accident or, see a car accident, and that could be traumatic. And
Mm.
so, kind of understanding it through their eyes is critically important. And then I will tell you that if we're not careful, if we don't get the youth the help that they need and the time and the timeliness that they need, it can impact their development. And so youth have got to go through certain sort of developmental things that happen. You probably know this from your Boys and Girls Club days.
Mhm.
They identify themselves through the eyes of others. So they want to fit in. They go through the middle school years and the high school years, and they need to go through these milestones. And if they've been through trauma and it impacts their ability to go through those milestones, the outcomes can be very difficult. So like helping youth develop in the face of trauma is an important and distinct task that like needs to be focused on, I think.
Well, yeah, definitely, and I can see how it plays out, even if a kid is doing well in school and on time for graduation. That maybe we won't see the experience of that trauma right then and there, but they leave home and go away to college, and it plays out someplace else by
Right.
yeah
Exactly. Yes.
by self medicating and trying to
Yes.
deal with their yeah.
Yeah, the long-term effects of it. You're right. And I
Hmm.
see somebody's asking about the thoughts around this exact issue around suicide versus overdose. And this is such a tricky one because I got this question a lot, even when I worked with the active duty population and veterans. I would at times testify at the Hill, and they would ask like, what's the difference, and how do we know that we're not capturing all the suicide numbers? Because in fact, some of them might be showing up like in the opioid numbers. If someone dies by addiction, how do we know that it's not suicide? And that's a hard one. And the sort of the way that we try to unpack it in the field is, do they have intent to die? So, like, if they left a note for suicide, it's clearly suicide. But what happens is sometimes people are using drugs in such a way that they end up dying, and you kind of have to say, okay, well, were they experimenting with drugs? Were they overdoing it with drugs? But in fact, they did not intend to die. There's a little bit of like, you interview the people that were around. You might sort of look at the days and months leading up to their death. There's a very formal process. They call it like a psychological health autopsy, where they'll study out the days and months leading up to the death to try to understand intent. And depending on where they fall on that intent question, helps sort of figure out if we in any ways here in the US look at it as a death by suicide or maybe an opioid overdose death or something like that. But you should know the numbers amazingly and tragically are very similar. Like you will see in the US, and I don't have the exact figure, but something like 47,000 some odd people will die by suicide in a given year, and equally so opioid deaths. Well, that figure will be similar. They'll hover 45, 46, 47,000. So it is tragic, both deaths across the board, both tragic, risky things that do need our attention, which is why I appreciate that you're talking about it this evening.
Well, thank you. And Dr. Franklin, thank you. And man, yeah, we got to have you back on, you know, at another time. And yeah, because it's something that I think you have to continue to do, to talk about, to bring awareness to, because many times most people don't talk about it. So,
yeah. And the more we are able to talk about it, the more hopefully we can get someone to come forward, to raise their hand, to ask for help, to know that it's okay if you're not okay. And that more we can sort of normalize it in such a way that we can be there for each other if somebody is struggling. So yeah, definitely happy to come back and talk to you more about these issues anytime you're open to it. And I'll go on camera, I promise.
Okay, no problem. And so good. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate you.
We're gonna be back soon, Lowe's, okay?
All right, no problem. So
okay. Good to see you, Kelly.
All right. And so again, thanks to everyone who who tunes in each and every week to the Blueprint podcast. I mean, I hope this has been informative, and it is a topic that we don't really talk about, right? And it's not the sexiest topic in the world, you know, but it's an important topic because so many people were struggling before the pandemic, and we're still in the pandemic. Although I've been at a few basketball games, and I've been in a few stores even today, and people act like there is no pandemic right now. And of course, it just came across the television. There's another variant, and things are going up. All I can say to you is, look, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to wear my mask. I'm going to stay my distance until I know that it may never be 100%, but I know for sure that we've made the kind of strides that, I don't have to worry about wearing a mask and all that kind of stuff. I would just want to be sure, right, that I'm not being infected and I'm not infecting anybody. So I'll say to you, stay safe and, and be blessed and, continue. Don't forget about next week as we continue with, celebrating Women's Month, Women's History Month. And, I'm going to have my little cousin on, Tisha Hyman, who's a star player on the women's team, basketball team at Syracuse University. We're still in March Madness. So we want to bring her on, talk about her experiences. You may see athletes out there doing great things and amazing things, but you don't know what they go through to become successful, right? And you don't know if they had any trauma or injury or anything like that. You just see them playing out there. You don't know what they go through, but she's going to come on and talk about her experience and talk a little bit about basketball and about what she's doing and what her future looks like. And so until next week, I want to say God bless you. I love you and have a powerful week.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Lowe's More, the Blueprint Podcast. Stay connected and follow us at our website, www.lowesmore.com. That's LOWESMOORE.com. You can also join the discussion on Twitter at Lowe's More and on Facebook at Lowe's More Jr. As always, thank you for pushing your mindset towards a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast to stay fully up to date with everything we're up to. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.
What they teaching is a joke. I ain't buying it like I'm broke. Insufficient funds for insignificant.